past that you folks up there should operate this town like a business. Well, to me, that's a pretty good business plan, having fiscal responsibility that you spend 25 cents and you get a whole dollar's worth of improvements to the city of Brigantine. So I support the efforts of the streetscape project, and I can only assume, I would think that your architect and your engineer is going to have a presentation here with conceptual drawings and information put out. So at that time we'll be able to know exactly what's going on. So I really like the idea, and I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I can assure you there'll be multiple presentations during the process.
Ed, again, what is the timeline on this?
So the NJEDA grants, just like the boat ramp grant that we're getting, it has a very tight time frame. The project has to be complete and reimbursements submitted by June of 2016. So we are, again, we're in a very tight time frame. Look to hopefully have the design completed early fall, out to bid in fall, and construction start winter if possible, or else well, as soon in the spring as possible.
Great. Any other public comment on the streetscape grant? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. Any additional council comments, discussion?
Yes. Referring back to Mrs. Phillips' comments, I don't know why, Phil, you had to argue with her. Her points are well taken. What I understood her to say is something I said at the last meeting, which is simply, I want to understand that the process, and we've referred to it as a process, but I've yet to hear what exactly the process is going to be from this point. But it's reasonable to ask, what will the process be, and will the process, is the process likely to yield value for your dollar? Now, I don't disagree with Mr. Pucci that if you can get a dollar's worth of value for 25 cents, that's a bargain. That's a direction you should look. But the starting question is, where do we end up? What are we going to get? I questioned back when we were talking about going out for the RFP, the sequence that we were doing it in. And I've had many conversations with Ed, so none of this comes as a surprise to him. And I understand from those conversations the rationale behind it, and I don't dispute, that it's done in good faith and well thought out. But I disagree with it. That at the beginning of the process, when we went out for the RFPs, it seemed to me that we were leaving things very open and very subjective, basically going out to the design community with some parameters in the RFP, but really not a lot of substantive parameters, and saying, should give us a price, give us a concept. And from that, and this is, I assume, the process that the mayor's referring to, that I have not yet heard explained, from that, once we get past this part of putting the financing in place, I assume there's going to be some sort of determination that one or more of the bidders, the proposers, is going to be called in and through some mechanism going to winnow down to one, and that one person is going to give us a design. And I understand that the stated plan is to also involve stakeholders, including the business owners / operators in the affected area. That to me seems to be something we should have done up front. We should, I think, have been better served by talking to the business owners and finding out from them, if we have access to X amount of dollars and we can put that money to work in your neighborhood, what would you like us to do with it? Not that that's going to be the be-all and end-all, but they do have the best information, I would think, about what matters and what doesn't matter, and what works and really think works and doesn't work in their neighborhood. I mean, I don't doubt we're going to end up with a very attractive project, whether it's heavy on pavers, heavy on street lighting, maybe uniform canopies, whatever it might be in the end. I don't doubt that it will be an attractive design. But back to Mrs. Phillips' question, will it affect the bottom line? Is it going to bring more bodies to our downtown? Are they going to spend more money? Is it going to help the business people? We don't know that. I mean, we're kind of throwing the dice. The other issue that I had with the process to this point was that in our RFP, in our application to NJEDA and then in the RFP, we put a total price, an all-in price of $750 in there. So my assumption was, until the last meeting when we found out that we were being asked to approve $1 million, that it was $750 and fully funded by a grant. It turns out that's not the case. So I assume if we pass this bond ordinance, we have a pool of approximately $1 million, and we expect that $750 will be reimbursed, and we'll spend somewhere up to $1 million total, depending on how this all plays out. I don't have a conceptual problem with investing money in our infrastructure in the downtown. I do have misgivings that this process is going to get us to the point where we have the best, however we're going to measure that, design, and that whatever it is we end up with, in fact, gives us value other than aesthetic improvement. You know, how do we measure what it does to the bottom line? I don't know that we can. Well-intentioned, no question about that, but I don't quite understand the method that we've chosen to get to the point of actually improving that 6-block stretch.
Can I add? Can I give you a
If you'd
couple
like.
couple responses? First, I think structurally, when we apply for a grant, we have to apply for something. So we have to pretty much tell the NJEDA, this is what we're looking to do. We're going to do a streetscape project, and the streetscape project in general is, you know, pretty well defined. It's going to be an aesthetic type improvement. So at the point back in 2013, when we made this application, we had to say this is what we're looking to do, and that's in fact what we did. We said we're going to do a streetscape, an aesthetic type improvement. We can at this point, when we get notice that we're going to receive $758,000, we can't say, well, instead of doing a streetscape like aesthetic type improvement, we want to do something else that maybe the business owners feel may be more appropriate or you know, may benefit their individual businesses to the max, because that horse has already left the barn. We had to apply for something. We had to be specific for what it is that we are asking, so that NJEDA could review that application against every other application that they received and weigh it on its merits. And so the NJEDA, Economic Development Authority, felt that a streetscape improvement that we were proposing, an aesthetic improvement consisting of concrete replacement, maybe brick pavers with, you know, to beautify it to some extent, landscaping, planters, street lighting, that type of concept, which in general is the streetscape concept, that was appropriate for them to fund. So again, that's already been done. So in the sense that we're doing a streetscape project and it's an aesthetic project, that decision was made back in 2013 when council authorized the application for that project. In terms of the total cost, at the time council authorized the project, so when we made application back in 2013, the construction cost was estimated at $758,000. Construction cost, no design, no construction management, no administration. The construction cost that we applied for was $758,000, and the grant that we received was for that dollar amount. When Jim Rotella and I put together the RFP for the design consulting fees, we accidentally noted in that RFP that the total cost of the project, including design and construction and contract management, was $758,000. That was our mistake. It was not what we applied for. It was not what we were given by the NJEDA. It was simply Jim Rotella and I trying to put together an RFP for design consulting services, and we made that mistake. We caught it actually when we were doing our pre-bid meetings with the consultants. So we put out the RFP. The RFP I actually had sent out to council, particularly to Rick. I know Rick had comments. We made some revisions in that RFP based on those comments, and we put it out, advertised it, and sent it out to all of our consultants. And we had several potential bidders pick up and show interest. We held a pre-bid meeting, 2 pre-bid meetings, and it was at the first pre-bid meeting that came to our attention, because in my mind I knew it was $758,000 for construction, and it was just a mistake. It was a cut and paste from a prior RFP in that section, so it was just a mistake. But we caught it in time, and we issued an addendum to all the bidders, so they all were aware prior to submitting their price that the construction cost for this 5 blocks is estimated at $758,000. That's the grant, and that their costs, consultant costs, would be above and beyond that number. So there was no confusion. That everyone knew that was the number. I apologize, Rick, if that was confusing. It was a mistake, but from the beginning, again, back in 2013, the estimate for construction only was $758,000, and it was for a streetscape project.
I do want to comment on my comments to Mrs. Phillips. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't let the public think that there were exorbitant costs in this project for design, construction management, and those fees. And as Mr. Stinson said, the hard number right now is around $60,000. So on a $758,000 construction cost. So I wanted to clarify that. But going back to the design process, it clearly is a streetscaping grant, and pavers, lighting, landscaping, that's what we're doing. Now the idea now is for the designer to design exactly what's going there within those parameters. So there will be a process, whether it's they're using Kwanzan cherry trees or Bradford pears. There'll be decisions that people will be talking about, but there's going to be some kind of green plant in that design. There will probably be pavers in that design. But there will not be facade developments for someone's business. It will be streetscaping, and there'll be handicap access ramps and things of that ADA compliance issues will be dealt with. Those kind of things are what the grant is meant to do. There will be a process. Anyone who's been involved in any type of building or anything that's been designed for public purpose, there is a design process that whether it's an architect or, in this case, a landscape architect or a design firm, they will go through. There will probably be several iterations based on feedback that they get from the public and from the property owners adjacent to it. But in my mind, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to develop a streetscape design to start in the central business district and hopefully be able to replicate it in other areas throughout our community. And for years I've heard about the beautiful walking malls in Stone Harbor and other areas that the shore has that these areas give visitors and residents alike some place to go and shop that is attractive, but also that will promote use of that area over time and easy access for all individuals. So this is, I think, a win-win for everyone, and something that we've, as Ed said, we've put in probably 5 times in 15 years trying to get this grant. So it's time to get this thing moving. The timeline makes it crucial that we approve this tonight and move forward.
Well, back to my other question then. What is the process from this point? What are the mechanics? We have 7 or 8 proposals or prices that came in, 2 of which I think are probably out of the ballpark, maybe more than 2. You have at least 2 or 3 that look to be in the same range. What happens next? Who's involved? Just walk us through the steps.
Okay. So I have already interviewed the two low bidders. I put together a committee that consists of myself, Ellie Derrickson, John Doring as Public Works Superintendent, and Ken Lefevre as the chairman of our Economic Development Committee, and Jim Rutella our grant consultant. We interviewed the two low bidders, and we individually, the committee members scored the consultants based on the criteria that was established in the RFP. And we've individually came up with our scores. The scores indicated, for all four of us, indicated the same bidder scored higher than the second bidder. So we all basically came to the conclusion that it was the same bidder. That's how I will have a report to council that I will send out with all of this information. I didn't obviously do it tonight because we don't have the funding to award that contract tonight. And I will share that with you. Also, the bids are available, the proposals are available for all of council to look at, and I'm happy to meet with you to go through them with you. It's the two that we interviewed. I will tell you I'd be very excited and very pleased to work with either of those two firms. They demonstrated to me personally and to the committee a knowledge of streetscape projects, a history and experience of streetscape projects. They understand thoroughly the whole process, the design elements. They actually educated us on things that they did in other towns and you know, how they met with the public and how they met with the property owners or the store owners. So I would be very comfortable moving forward with either of the two. I'll tell you, all of the proposals came in. They all had experience in the streetscape projects. So, but I think the two that we interviewed, like I said, were you know, a cut above the rest, and I think we're in very good position. I'm very excited about it. I think we have two great options, and I'll share that with you. I'll send out my recommendation, and it'll be prior to our next meeting. All right, so then I'm going to ask council. I'll make a recommendation. I'll ask council to award the consultant. From there, the consultant will start his field work, and at the same time, we'll come up with 3 conceptual designs. I want to kind of tighten in on the concept. What are the possible design elements there? We're kind of limited. We're not going to, you know, we're on Brigantine Boulevard. It's a county road. We're not going to narrow that street. We're not going to change the traffic patterns. So really what we're talking about is from the curb to the building in that space. And we're looking at doing landscaping, looking at doing the concrete and some sort of a design element. It may be a lot of pavers, it may be limited pavers, it may be different pavers. You know, that's why we have a consultant that has done the work. These 2 consultants that I'll bring back to you guys, they have years of experience in doing streetscape projects. But they're all basically, the concept's the same. They're going to do some concrete work, they're going to do some landscaping, they're going to be lighting, there's going to be street furniture. They may do bump outs at the corners, you know, to narrow the crossing for the pedestrians. There's common themes that you see in every streetscape project, and they're going to be the same that you're going to see here. In general, they may have different flares depending on the consultants, but so they're going to bring back 3 concepts. I anticipate it's going to go at least initially to the Economic Development Committee for some guidance, but then it will go to meetings. The consultants will be required to meet with all the property owners that are adjacent to this scope of work, and there will be public meetings. That we talked about doing a public meeting on the site, you know, once we narrow this design down to kind of here's the general design that we're looking to do. But it will be with a great input from the store owners on each block and council's input as well.
And I do believe that when we get to the 758 total all in, that doesn't mean we're giving you $242,000 to go crazy with. You need your buffer. You got to make sure that something happens with the concrete or whatever can come up in a project. And people who are raising their houses now and Sandy and all that, and whatever they got from the state, they know they need to take it out of their own pocket. I've been accused of shutting down 7-Eleven, shutting all the stores down in the community center and everything else. We have talked, this whole body here have talked about helping businesses out, and this is a great opportunity to help the businesses out for a small amount of money. So I'm all in favor of it, and exactly what you're doing is perfect. You know, meeting with the business owners, the property owners, and, you know, everybody has their input, but we got to get it done too. So I think it's an excellent idea.
I think something too, probably one of my biggest criticisms of governing bodies is that you get too focused on dollars and cents. And it's important to make sure that you're controlling spending, but I think it's also important to invest in your community. I've talked to a lot of business owners here, and one of the things they say is they do okay in the summer months, they get through, but they're struggling. You know, we've seen a lot of businesses close down. One of the things that we need to do is support our business community, and we need to make it attractive for people to come here. And it's not just about going to a store and spending money. You know, sometimes when people come here, they come to Brigantine for the experience. And being out on that main shopping center in that main area in our business district, it's not just about walking in those shops. Like, it's the feeling of walking down that street. And that beautification adds to that. And it's those memories that will bring people back. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, and it's one of the best things that we can do for our community. It's about repeat business. It's about bringing people back. And if we can spend a little bit of money to create those memories, to create the traditions, to bring people to Brigantine, it's going to benefit everybody. And listen, there's no guarantees in life. And you know that as any personal investor, you put investments out there and you hope for the best on your return. But right now, this was reviewed by the state, and this was deemed as one of the best options for the state to spend its money on. And I think it's one of the best ways that we can spend our money to support the island and to support the business community. So I support it 100%. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this, on the streetscape? Oh, we closed the public portion, but do you want to comment on the? Okay. You sure? Yeah. All right. Okay, could we have roll call, please?
You? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. All right, next we move to Resolution 2015-132, emergency appropriation for the Municipal Alliance. And can we have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
And this allows for an emergency insertion into the budget of $8,160 and 3% of the total. It looks like the local match is $4,080.
That is correct. This is a catch-up for the Municipal Alliance grant. There's a local match for it. It was not budgeted, the local match was not, so this puts that back in, gives us the funding so we can take that grant.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
You? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And Resolution 2015-134 is insertion of special item of revenue for the Municipal Alliance again. We have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mayor, the first resolution was from July 1st of 14 to June of 15, and this is for July 1st of 15 to 16.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
You? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Gonna be the same thing.
Next is a special item of revenue for the firefighter assistance grant for Homeland Security. A motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
And this is the grant that was applied for by the fire department in the amount of $268,000, $268,096.
Did we skip over a resolution for additional revenue?
We did?
There were two.
Right.
I thought we did the second one.
There's
No, there's
a
three,
different year.
There's three.
Are they
Oh,
two,
there's three, I'm
two
sorry.
grants?
3 altogether.
We did skip one,
two.
I'm sorry. Let's do the firefighter and we'll go back to the other one, since we're on that. We had a motion second?
So moved.
Any, we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to again thank the fire department for their application. I actually did talk to staff member from Congressman Lobiondo's office, and they complimented the quality of your application. They said it was excellent. So the quality of that application is what enabled you to acquire the grant funds.
And Mayor, if the fire chief could, I'd like him to explain, because it's a fantastic grant, and they did put a lot of work into the application. So, go ahead, Chief.
This grant was actually, the work was done by Cap McGuire. He worked along with Jim Matella and myself, and Joe did all of the narrations and so forth. It actually sold it, if you would. But this actually is going to enable us to replace all of our SCBA units, all of our air packs. We are 3 versions out of new, if you would. Any money we put into our old ones would have been for naught, because these all have different connection points and so forth and so on. But in a nutshell, this saves the city a great deal of money, because it's something that was actually put into a bond that was floated years back, that we bought the trucks from and so forth. The whole amount was not bonded for, but that amount that was bonded will now, not need to be borrowed, if you would. So this is a great thing, and we're happy to be moving forward with this.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, roll call.
Okay, any further discussion on the firefighters grant? Okay, seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
View, Yes. McLean,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, we go back to Resolution 2015-134 is assertion of a special revenue for the Municipal Alliance. Go motion second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Could we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Resolution 2015-136 authorizes the rebid of the open box containers. Go motion second, please.
So
Make
moved.
that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Resolution 2015-137 designating TD Bank as the official depository for the city of Brigantine. Motion second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have one quick question. Do we earn interest on our money at TD Bank? Does the city earn interest?
Whatever interest there is.
Certainly for some accounts we do, yes.
Some accounts we do?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Are there a lot of service fees that we have to pay for these accounts? Or is it pretty much a,
So I don't know that answer.
oh, okay. Oh, that's okay. I know a lot of money goes through the city. I wasn't
the
sure how much interest
Accounts
we
that
earn.
size, they'll never charge the service charges.
I'm sorry, I didn't
With
hear
accounts
that.
that size, we'll never charge service charges.
No service.
Okay. Could we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, Resolution 2015-138 is award of contract as a shared service agreement for an expert for the COA litigation. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Ed, you want to describe what we're signing up to participate in?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. This is a co-op opportunity for us to join with Rutgers as a shared service. Rutgers has engaged the services or hired the services of a COA, an expert in the Affordable Housing, the Fair Share Housing Act. And as this shared service, that expert will, on our behalf, work towards certain calculations of our obligations, and we can use that information as part of our certification for a fair share housing plan.
Great.
It's a good opportunity. We get the benefit of a reduced cost for the work because we're going in with several other communities as well.
And I think the total amount is about $2,000, which is, you know, when you look at the number of municipalities that are going to be participating, it seems to be a very good deal for us and for the other municipalities, and the shared knowledge, of course, is probably the primary benefit. Okay, any further discussion?
There was one thing I noticed in here. Second from the last paragraph, it says that whereas it is anticipated that there will be a need for Dr. Burchell to analyze any challenges to his conclusions and prepare a rebuttal report to said challenges, which is not included. What if Fair Share Housing challenges his analysis? Are we on the hook for the litigation? Because it doesn't sound like it's included here.
Right, so it would be negotiated at that time, because again, it would be part of a shared service with all the co-op and with all the municipalities that are going to be part of this. So I think if that comes up, it'll be a separate
Well,
agreement.
this would cover ongoing litigation, right? Any ongoing litigation would not be covered by this agreement.
No. It's additional.
Right, but
Right, that would be
remember,
additional.
he's doing an analysis, so
Right.
his,
But it's not, this doesn't cover the entire issue settling it. It's just a first stage where he defends his analysis. Right.
right, so this also was a recommendation of Shirley Bishop, who was our COA consultant.
Mhm.
So I guess, Fred, the question is, as an expert, if he was called in to challenge, if his analysis were to be challenged, I mean, it's hard to estimate the cost, but it's not like an attorney going through the litigation process, correct? He
Well,
would
no, I
just
mean-
be a,
This folds into the declaratory action that we were in the process of filing, the council previously approved. Within the parameters of that declaratory action, this gentleman will be our expert witness, as he will be the expert witness for probably 25 to 35 different communities. He will generate a number on behalf of Brigantine, and beyond that number, the methodology and rationale that he uses will be common to all of the analyses that he is doing. This person comes highly recommended, and the thought is that with his background, with the type of analysis that will be done, we will be in a stronger position within that declaratory litigation. If for some reason we have to spin out and go further or engage other levels within the litigation, and if that change or other level of litigation requires his ongoing services, we will probably have to revisit
Yeah.
the fee function. But the thrust here is you're getting a top-level professional for $2,000 to come in and do this initial strike for you. That's really what this is about.
thank you. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, can we have
And,
roll?
yeah, and
I'm
the
sorry.
manager points out, this is paid out of our trust dollars.
It's paid out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Oh, so if there's any ongoing fees or litigation, it would come out of that fund?
Yeah, up to a maximum percentage-wise.
Okay.
But certainly, this $2,000 comes out of that fund.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Hugh?
Yes.
McLeay?
Yes.
Bacardi?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, next we move to Resolution 2015-139 is ratification of the Government Workers Union Local 300 Dispatchers Contract. We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so what we have is a resolution calling for ratification of this contract, which Mr. Stinson has been expired since 2012? 2012. Council has been provided with the backup documentation. At this point, I'm not sure if any further discussion is warranted based on the sense that I received as we looked at the presentation prior to this part of the meeting. So unless someone has another discussion they would like to make, I think we might be best served by having a roll call.
Was there a motion?
Yeah, there was a motion and a second.
Now, I think Fred should explain up and down.
I'm assuming the motion was in the affirmative.
Yes.
So obviously then, a yes vote is in favor of the resolution, which resolution supports the contract, or the proposed contract.
Correct.
A no vote is contrary to accepting the proposed contract.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
You?
No.
McClay?
No.
McCarty?
No.
DeLucre?
No.
Sarah?
No.
Simpson?
No.
Mayor Gunther?
No.
Motion defeated.
Okay. At this point, we need to go into the renewal of the liquor licenses.
Mayor, can we invoke the Banani rule on these? None of them are complicated.
That's
we
what I
look-
was going to ask
Okay.
Mr. Cerny if we could, yes, invoke the Banani rule on this, and if we could have the presentation by our police, and then move to
The banana rule.
vote on these, Fred, together?
If I am looking at the agenda correctly, it would be council's intention to move Resolution 140 through and including Resolution 150 with a single motion. If any member of council has questions or needs to discuss or object to any of those, please identify that which you need to object to or comment upon, and we will remove it from that list and make it the subject matter of a second motion. But absent that kind of a request by a council member, you will move all of those together.
Okay, any members of council with conflicts? Okay. Seeing none, then we need a motion to approve resolutions 2015-140 through 2015-150. Have a motion and a second, please.
So, second.
Okay. At this time, we'd ask for Chief Reed to take us through the report.
Sergeant Wizak was assigned to do the background investigation into the renewal of the license.
Okay, so
Sergeant
Sergeant Woodek, if you wouldn't mind, can we go, if you don't mind, we can go license by license just quickly, and council could ask any questions pertaining to your report.
Pretty much my report reflects, it's going to address all of the licenses. I conducted a survey of the calls of service to the establishments. As you know, we do it every year. Basically, what I try to do is I try to break down and I pull up all the calls, and I try to determine if it's involving the licensed establishment or if it's just an unrelated call to the establishment. My analysis basically showed that there were no violations that involved wrongdoing on the licensed establishments involving liquor or the service of liquor or underage sales or anything of that nature. For the most part, the calls of service were pretty much the same from year to year. There was no increase in areas. The inspections were basically done with, no notice, and all of the licensees were within compliance. There was no discrepancies found in any of the areas inspected, and everything appeared to be in order on all of the liquor licenses in Brigantine.
Great. Any members of the council have any questions?
Just one specific.
Pertaining, yes.
Yeah, to the noise complaints, specifically to the Laguna, was it because the complaint was made or the Laguna was out of compliance with the ordinances? Do you know how that fell out?
What are you referring to? Are you asking whether was there a complaint specifically for noise, or was?
Yeah, the report mentions noise complaints, and it was the only establishment that had a good amount. So my question is, was it just because there was a complaint filed, or was there an actual violation of
One of the
ordinances?
problems we've always had with the Laguna is just the location. Again, a lot of times determining where the noise came from. It could be from people from the parking lots, the area where it's at on the corner. Sometimes it was noise from the restaurant, but again, to say that there was an egregious amount of violations coming from Laguna, I don't think that could be determined.
Okay.
Just from them. Again, these calls of service, these are generated throughout the year, so to go back and look through all of them, it's very hard sometimes to find out exactly where it's coming from. For the most part, they were, I believe, from what I could tell, just noise that was around that area.
Just nuisance calls?
Yes, but, there were some, I'm sure, from bar as well.
I think sometimes also, when the band is playing and if it depends on the direction of the wind, actually.
Right.
The wind will carry the sound waves and people hear it and they just make a phone call. So you really can't control that. It's just the way the wind blows. I could be on my deck on 11th Street North and hear the music. It just depends. So I don't think there's any violation with the noise ordinance.
Okay. Anything else on any of the complaints or any of the other issues contained in Sergeant Woodzak's report? Sir, did you want to comment on the liquor licenses before we vote?
Something regarding the noise.
Is it pertaining to this? Yes. Okay, I'll open it up for you to comment on that if you'd like.
My name is John Conway, 251 12th Street South. I was one of the individuals that made a complaint about the noise from Laguna Grill last year, and I came over to the police department, talked to an individual officer. I told him what my complaint was. I told him that I had spoken to my city council person. I reviewed, based on her recommendation, statutes that were listed for Brigantine on this particular site. I told the officer what I had found, and he was amazed at what I brought to his attention. I asked him if there was a decibel level that indicates if there is a noise complaint. Who is to say what is a complaint and what isn't a complaint? Who's to say? My hearing something and someone else hearing something could be completely different. So he actually said there's no real, if someone makes a complaint, an officer may drive by and see if there is a loud noise and possibly contact the owner and tell him there was a complaint, and that's what the officer did that day, and the noise stopped. And I want to thank the police for doing that. But in talking to the police officer, the statutes that I saw regarding noise were there is no decibel level per se that a police officer knows what is a violation, what isn't. There is no tool that he can use, that he has. The statutes indicate there should be. There is a decibel level that it shouldn't. If I'm living on 12th Street South and there's something 50 foot away from my property that is loud to me, that's breaking the noise statute. Now, what is a statute? I don't know what a statute is from the state or the city. I don't know what it indicates. But I also told the police officer that Apple has a app that gives you a decibel tool right on your phone or iPad, which is available to anyone free of charge. So last week, I had the same problem, but I didn't complain about it. But in looking at some of the newspapers, I see that there's going to be a wine outing on the beach, and it's going to go till 10 o'clock at night. And I have no problem with what's going on. It's just that if I have a family member down and they have a child and we put that child to sleep at 8 o'clock or whatever the child goes to sleep at, and I have my TV on and my air conditioning on, and I can hear music through my walls from the Laguna Grill, number one, why do I have to call the police to make a complaint when they should be hearing the same noise? But my problem still is the statutes that are on the books, should they be recognized and adhered to? Do you know that the statute says that there should be a decibel tool, that there should be a police officer assigned just to noise, and a director just for noise? Now, if it's on the books as a statute, what do we do? Do we disregard that statute? Or we just pick and choose? How's it work?
Well,
I don't know. I want to be educated.
John, for the record, your address is?
251 12th Street South.
251. All right, Chief Reed, I don't know if you want to comment on the difficulty with decibel meters and noise ordinances and things of that nature.
We do not have a decimal reader, nor do we have anybody certified for a decimal reader. Using an app, like you said, the problem with that is it's not certified. It's not certified using an app like that.
But the officer told me that they can make a judge by driving by and hearing the noise. I would think that a decimal tool, regardless if it's certified or not, would give them an opportunity to say it's at this decibel level according to this. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it could help. I mean, who's to say what's loud to you and what's loud to me or what's loud to the mayor? But if they have a tool that says it's 15 and it should be 5 or 10, then the officer has the ability to say, here it is right here. So it gives the person that's in charge of that bar or whatever the case may be, an opportunity to say, I'm sorry, and I'll take care of it. Not that he wouldn't do it in the first place, but I'm just saying that it's a tool.
Does the statute have the decimal?
Yes.
What's supposed to be?
There's about 50 pages just on noise. And it was
What
too
it's
much
supposed to be, though?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. And it's that simple. And I put it on when I was there, and it was way over what it should have been. And I told the police officer, and he said, I've never even heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
John,
know.
what time of day is?
It starts around 6:30, 7 o'clock. And it's from the band, like Miss McClay said, and sometimes you hear, I thought it was coming from the 5 and Dime store. I actually walked over. I was going to tell the gentleman, could he lower it a little bit, because I just put my daughter's baby to sleep. And I went over, there was no noise. So I walked around towards 12th Street, going towards the beach, and there was a woman coming down. She said, where's that noise coming from? She said, Laguna Grill. I said, Laguna Grill? It's 2.5 blocks away. So it may be inconsequential or not a big issue, but it's on the books. So do we go by what the book says, or do we just make a judgment call? Let me know, because then I'll disregard what I have to say or what I have to do, but I don't know where to go from here.
5 minutes are up.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred, I don't know if you have any experience in any other municipalities with noise ordinances and decibels?
You know, much of what the gentleman says is correct. I mean, who knows what noise affects what people, and that's why you really work off of decibels. The question becomes, in large part, do you want to start down a course that is going to require additional equipment and additional training with your officers? Is this a problem that is of that dynamic that you want to go that way? I think as a practical matter, operationally, when you're involved with noise complaints, the real intent is to have somebody respond to the noise, make an inquiry, and go to the location and say, turn it down a little bit. It is more in that kind of a service level than it is truly trying to establish a violation that will go into court. You're only going to end up in court if it becomes extreme. You're only going to end up in court if you have all the proper training and equipment. The app is not going to be admissible in a court because it is not certified and there's no particular training on it.
Well, I can tell you that
Then shouldn't we?
Mr. Reynolds is a very responsible operator. The experience that I've had with him and his commitment to the community. So I'm sure if there's a complaint and the police do go over and talk to him at that point, he will try and resolve the matter. But I would tell you, definitely call if you have an issue. That's why they're there.
Is there a time when they have to shut it off?
9 o'clock.
Like 10 o'clock?
I think
I
it's,
think his cutoff is like 10 o'clock.
yeah, I think it's 10.
But when you do call, they do notify the owner. That's what the officer's required to do, notify the owner when they're there.
Right.
I know where the music's coming from. Do you hear music after that? Do you hear it?
No, this is what happened the night before, so I went the next day and I told the police officer.
Okay.
So he said if it happens tonight, he will go. And it started, and the police officer must have gone, because he asked me, he was so nice enough to ask me that, how would you like me to respond to you? Would you like me to stop over your house? And I said, no, thank you. I said, if it stops, it stops. Thank you very much. And he did stop the next day.
What I'm asking prior to that, have you called?
I never called, because I wasn't sure what number to call, whether to call the separate number, not the 911.
You never called the police department?
I never called that police department for that particular item.
Okay.
But-
Well, what's gonna happen is you call, we're gonna go to the establishment, we're gonna document it, we're gonna speak to the, Florida and the management, we're gonna speak to them, and we're gonna ask them to turn it down.
Hey, Tim, could you stop by and maybe see Rip and tell him that this is one of the problems here, and maybe he can, before it gets any farther, you know,
Yes, okay, absolutely. Thank you.
stop by and
But-
see him.
But, yeah.
Mr. Reynolds, I didn't know who that was.
Fred,
That's who I meant, Rip.
but
He's pretty good, and he says, I know there's bands, he's asked not to come back.
Right.
Because of that. Because they've gone too high, and he said, I told you once, twice, never out here.
What happened last week, I didn't make any complaints about it, but last weekend, it was very hot.
Okay,
And the wind was
when it
blowing.
starts to die down,
The wind was
9
blowing,
o'clock,
too.
10 o'clock, so I don't know, I know that there was.
That's what it goes back to.
Statutes that kind of at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, or whatever, but the statutes are the statutes.
Well, just let the chief go over and have a sit down with him and everything.
He's on site.
Yeah.
At night, he's, during the days in and out, but he's there until closing, Mr. Reynolds.
but, Fred, doesn't this,
Okay.
Actually, the police officer said to me, do you want to go talk to Mr. Reynolds, or would you like me to go? I said, well, I think you should go, you have a badge and a gun, you go listen to you before this is for me.
He has a cigar and a drink.
Fred, doesn't this,
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
doesn't this bring up the issue, though, if we have an ordinance like this, it's really unenforceable, that at some point we should review it and like take those measurements for decibels out of there and put some type of language in it so that people can respond, even if it's on a subjective level. We know that people are responding and it can be documented as such. What's the sense of having the decibels if it's useless in there and it can lead to contention? Especially with all these apps running around.
That's a tough question. I mean, because if we take the decimals out and go purely subjective, in all likelihood, that's probably not going to be enforceable. I mean, I haven't looked at this issue recently, but I know several years ago we looked at it, and there are cases that really deal with being purely subjective and whether or not that is going to be enforceable.
But we don't
It's
have
a-
the possibility of being
Well,
objective
then-
because we don't have the equipment.
Well, but that's, okay, so that becomes your issue. In order to do it the correct way, you need a decibel in the
Need it.
ordinance, and to do it the correct way, you need the equipment to measure the decibel. Other than that, you are providing a service and a response by your police department, which takes on the nature of what this conversation has been. Let's try to work with everybody and help everybody out a little bit, rather than trying to build a super case to go into a court. I mean, admittedly, it's a gray area, it's a soft response, but either you're going to do subjective, and I don't think that's enforceable, or you're going to do a decibel, and you're going to need to change the nature of your operation. It's one or the other. Or you try to find this ground of just helping everybody out in a neighborly way.
Let's see what happens.
And getting back to what I said, though, like, he could be playing music, a band, and it could be within the limits of the decibels, but the way the sound waves flow, you will hear it. Someone 10 blocks further will hear it. So how do you factor in the speed of sound that travels through the air? I mean, it's crazy.
Excuse me, Chief Reed, I guess to your knowledge, have you ever had a situation where an officer has responded to an establishment where they've challenged you and said that they weren't loud or they weren't in compliance?
No.
So when an officer responds, most people will turn it down and be in compliance.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, so make a,
And like Councilman Clay said, I mean, sometimes the officer goes there, you don't hear it, but you can go lots
Right.
and blocks away, you can hear it.
Almost like an echo.
Yeah.
It kind of like an echo, it seems like.
But sometimes, you go there and it's not them or somebody else, it's from them, the person that complains, it's coming from somewhere else.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Chief. All right, any other concerns about any of the other items listed in Sergeant Woodsack's report? If not, we've had a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Can we have roll call, please?
View. Yes.
Leclerc?
Yes.
Bacardi?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we move to Resolution 2015-151, authorizes the execution of an agreement with Rutgers University for the location of CODAR antennas in the city of Brigantine. We have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Ed, do you want to just describe what these antennas do for the purpose of the public?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a radar station that is operated by Rutgers in cooperation with the Coast Guard and NOAA. And the antennas measure the wave height and the currents in our ocean, and they are part of a network of similar radar stations up and down the coast. They are used, the information collected is used by the Coast Guard for search and rescue events and used by NOAA for forecasting events. So it's actually a very, very interesting process.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Okay, can we have roll call, please?
View?
Yes.
Leclerc?
Yes.
Bacardi?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, move to our consent agenda. We have one item, the Elks raffle license number 743. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Can we have roll call?
View?
Yes.
Leclerc?
Yes.
Bacardi?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, next we move to our manager council committee discussions, and we have one item on from the manager, and that's the fire department ISO rating. Ed?
Thank you, Mayor. We have some good news from the fire department regarding their rating, the ISO rating, and I'd like to turn it over to the chief. It's really an excellent achievement, and it shows the good work the chief and the fire department are doing. Chief?
All right, this is something that is done, the last time it was done was about 5 years ago. It's at a company that comes in. We did this, they did similar ISO, I believe, with the flood insurance. It's the same type of a analysis. if you
Excuse me,
would.
Chief, you want to explain ISO, the initials?
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
The
Just so the public
insurance
understands.
service,
Services organization. So it is, ISO is actually, I apologize. ISO is actually used by some, or I'm sorry, this rating is used by some insurance companies when they do their homeowners insurance. Some insurance companies actually go strictly by that, and they analyze like the fire department, the flood and so forth like that. Other insurance companies do it other ways. But this is a rating system that's out there. It ultimately will and should save people on their homeowners insurance. I don't know the exact figures. I'm actually trying to find that out. But basically what they do is they look at our department. Out of 14,000 departments nationwide, we moved from a class 4 to a class 3, class 1 being the best. There's only 2,891 departments out of 14,000 that are class 3. When you move to 2, that's 917, and a class 1 is 97. There's some things that will preclude us from ever moving up to a class 1. You know, actual having a burn building in the town. I mean, things that we just could not do. Staffing levels that we would just never be able to reach. But this was a big thing that was a culmination of work done by our training officer, Captain Bornero, a lot of other things that we do that we've worked and tried to increase our efficiencies, if you would. But this is a outside company that comes in and actually rates our department. I spent several days with this individual that set this up, that does this analysis. A lot of documentation went back and forth, and we're still working to make it even better. But I actually, you know, applaud the efforts of the department and actually council and the city manager supporting us in the things that we do. Because the things that they look at, like I said, is the training that we do, the equipment that we have. The hydrant system is a big thing through Public Works that actually goes into this. And the maintenance of all those things as well. They actually look at how we test hydrants, how we have our equipment serviced. They look at the training hours. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and it was actually a pretty good thing for the department. And I would love to be able to give you, like they did with the flood insurance, a percentage that you'll save in your fire insurance and homeowners insurance, but we're still working on that. But to just know that what we're doing and how we do it is recognized by someone and actually is a good thing for us.
Chief, do they look at response time as well?
Everything. They actually look at our manpower, they look at response time. Now, they look at our manpower, and that's something that we're still working on, and that's something we'll work towards. But yeah, they look at the response times, they look at all of those things, and what we're responding with, what type of equipment, the new engine that we just purchased. They looked at what was going into that. When I did this with this gentleman, the engine wasn't here, but we actually pulled out the specs and showed him what was going to be on it. Councilman Carter, you saw, I mean, some of the things that we put on that actually worked towards this.
Do EMT services figure into this?
They really don't. You know what? I don't believe it does. This is more fire. This is fire-based. This is analyzed our fire department, that side of it. Obviously, as you know, our EMTs and so forth, we are both, but that's another whole, it's another whole rating that we'll be looking at.
Great. Well, congratulations, Chief. And I think, as I said earlier, I think a lot of people are looking at increases at this time in their homeowners insurance. So this is there's no guarantee, but it certainly is something, if it is one of your insurance companies that uses that rating, it might help to reduce some of the size of that increase. So I want to commend you and the fire department for going through a monitoring process, which is never easy, but it always is informative.
Well, we thank you for your support and the city managers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, any other reports?
No, that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. I guess briefly we can just, if anybody else have any reports?
I have three things I wanted to touch on. Can do it now or after the book portion, doesn't really matter.
Is it a report or a council
No,
comment?
it's more in the realm of a comment than a report.
Okay, we can wait then. I just wanted to make just a brief comment about the Economic Development, Tourism and Special Events Committee. We did have another meeting, and you know, we will continue to meet. There are some resources that we'll be looking at. There is a meeting coming up, a county-wide meeting. I think it's June 30th. That we've been invited to look at some of the other communities, what they're doing with their economic development efforts, and utilize the Atlantic County Improvement Authority resources. They have an economist and other individuals who are involved in that process. So there'll be hopefully some more information about continuing our efforts to improve our economic development strategies going forward, but there will be a lot of sharing of information, I think, on the 30th.
Ed, I have a question or comment. It recently was brought to my attention that the repair permits fees are not being waived any longer for Sandy damaged homes, whether they're through REM or however they're still recovering and repairing. If someone has 50% damage, they're no longer getting any fees waived through the construction office?
That is correct. So council waived the fees and actually waived up to $2,000, I think was the last change, waiving the fees. But that ended December of this past year, December 31st. So that no longer exists. So whether they're substantially damaged or not, the 50%, you know, really it's 2.5 years since Sandy. If they submitted for any permits on that building, so if they submitted for a substantial damage declaration prior to December, then they submitted a building application and their fees were waived. So it's really only for those applicants who have come to the construction office after January 1st of this year to submit any building permit. They're the ones that aren't seeing the benefit of a waived fee. Anybody who submitted prior to December 31st has the benefit of council's waiving the fee.
If a letter was received prior to December 31st, that doesn't count?
When you say the letter was, which letter?
Substantially damaged.
So in order to receive that letter, so the way the process works at the construction office, the homeowner actually comes in and applies for a building permit to make repairs to their house. And it is in that review of the application, basically the denial of that application is a substantial damage determination. I'll give credit to Rich Stevens for that. That is a process that he put in place almost immediately after Sandy. We had a meeting with FEMA. It had to be a week after Sandy, and they came down to tell us, you know, you're going to have to do these substantial damage declarations, and they went over the process with us. It was Rich Stevens that said, well, in order for me to do it, I'm going to create a building permit number, and this is the process that's going to be in place. Over, you know, the next several months after that, we would go into the Coastal Coalition meetings, and that's up and down the coast, and we had construction officials there, and every one of those adopted Rich Stevens' method of you know, accepting those applications and processing those permits. So anyway, that was my little commercial, but back to your question. If they have a substantial damage declaration that's dated prior to December 31st of last year, that means they submitted a building application prior to December, and therefore their fees were waived.
Okay, and there are some very unique situations, especially with the change of pathways, and now they're in a new pathway and they're starting over, but maybe they had the permit the first time in 2014, and now they're not their permits not being waived.
So-
Are there some situations where that could happen?
Most of the time, if that happens, it is an update to an existing permit. It is not a new permit. Now, maybe with the exception if the permit that was applied for was, for example, to raise a building, and then they decide to come in and tear it down and rebuild, maybe the permit application for the rebuild may come in after January, and that would then be charged a fee. I'd rather than speculate tonight, if you would either forward me a name and a phone number, I will reach out to them, or I'll get Rich Stevens to reach out to whomever we're speaking of, or you can ask them to come in to see me, and I'll deal with it the best I can. I mean, we have, council has a resolution that waives fees up to December 31st of 2014. So,
Do you have any idea how much was waived at this point?
I know that number, or I should say I have that number in my office. I am guessing, I'm actually just going to be guessing at this point. I don't remember. Several hundred thousand, in the neighborhood of pushing, I'd say 500,000 is my guess. Actually, that seems high. So I'd rather not guess, put it that way.
The fact that all the claims are being re-examined, is that going to put us into a position where people are going to come now, at this point, seeking to do remediation that maybe before they weren't able to, so they didn't even apply? You know, in other words, are we going to have to revisit the issue of waivers again?
Well, let me ask it a different way, Joe, and I think it's a good question. Is the standard still substantial damage?
So for the REM applications, it is no longer substantial
It is no
damage.
longer, so it's getting, it is a gray area, and that's, what I'm getting at is some people may be receiving REM money that did not have over 50% damage.
And also, and I will share, I had a meeting with the DCA last year, and they were shocked that Brigantine was still waiving construction fees. They told us that most of the communities that waived the fees waived them for the very first year, for 2013, and that was it. So the ones that did waive the fees, they waived them for 2013 and not 14, and Brigantine was 2013 and 2014.
Do we have any mechanism in place for hardship cases?
So I think the mechanism would be that I would bring it to council.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you, Joe. It's good. Any other committee reports? If not, I'll open it up for the public comment. If anyone would like to address council on any issue, please step forward, use the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Yes, Mrs. Phillips.
Ann H. Phillips, 308 27th Street, regarding the cancellation of the Blues, Brews, and Barbecue event. I don't think the city handled this well. The cancellation, I believe, is detrimental to the city and to the taxpayers, especially in a time of a weak economy. Other cities have such events and have done them with successfully. And I think Brigantine missed an opportunity to boost the economy and to have a unique event in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clear that up, Mrs. Phillips, the city did not cancel the event.
Oh, I know that. I didn't say it did.
Right.
It canceled because
Right.
of the way the city handled it.
So I'd like to, if I could, the event was canceled by the event coordinator. However, I disagree completely that it was canceled or should have been canceled because of the way the city handled it. We, in my opinion, we extended our services, certainly our departments, to meet with the event coordinator. I count over 9 meetings just with the public safety department and the event coordinator since March of this year. 9 times. I think we availed ourselves as much as possible to make that event happen. And I am disappointed, as I'm sure we all are, that it was canceled. But it certainly, and I feel very strongly, that it was not because of a lack of effort or lack of cooperation on our part.
And at this time, if the event organizers wish to reopen the negotiations or the request, I think this council would be open to hearing that again. In fact, this council approved it already.
And in fact, Mayor, this council approved it and gave a deadline of August 18th to provide the specific information, like the insurance and the not-for-profit, the ABC license and things like that. So how a June 1st deadline came, I wasn't aware of it until the letter requesting the resolution was submitted to the city. But it certainly was not a deadline imposed by my office or by council. So again, I don't know where that came from. I'm not sure what really the threshold was behind that. Our deadline that council imposed in the authorizing resolution for the event was August 18th.
Thank you. Yes, Mike.
As
Mike, do you want, just for a record, if you would identify.
Michael Feely, Executive Director, Brigantine Blues Foundation, Festival Director of the Blues event. There's a little bit of revisionist history here. The meetings with the city were extensive. I personally met last year in 2014 with all members of City Council one-on-one, taking them through the scope and breadth of the event. After the new members of City Council were elected this year, I also sat down with them shortly after they were sworn in and took them through the scope and the breadth of the event. I've had meetings with John Doring for over the last year. And I will say to you, as I stated in my letter to council when we were forced to cancel this event, that Mr. Doring is probably the most cooperative member of the city administration towards this event. As the city manager mentioned, there was a resolution by council which was verbally approved 3 months ago, off the top of my head, of which I asked that it be memorialized, and at the subsequent council meeting, the resolution had not been completed, and therefore at the meeting after that, it was memorialized so that we had a copy of the resolution to include in the ABC permit request. Now, at that time, it was my understanding and the understanding of my committee, and I believe, and correct me if I'm speaking out of term, it was council's understanding that that was the only resolution we were going to require going forward. Subsequent to that, in meetings with the chief of police and his staff, we were informed that council was going to have to pass another resolution waiving the prohibition of alcohol on city property and on the city beaches. That was news to me. But knowing that we had contracts coming up, and with a previous meeting with and actually the only meeting that we had with the city manager, it was understood that we had to have our reports in, and this was also with the chief of police, that everything had to be completed by June 1st. Now, if the chief of police neglected to communicate this waiver request to either the city clerk or to the city manager, I'm not aware of it. But he was made aware that we had due dates, and the June 1st date, I had everything to the city clerk with copies to the chief of police in order to have the ABC license submitted. I then sent an email to the chief of police either on Tuesday or Wednesday after turning the other information in on Monday. I received that request was there any other materials or information that he required? I received no response. I then on Wednesday sent an email to the city clerk and the city manager stating that it was imperative that we have this resolution on Saturday's agenda. On Thursday, I received an email from the city clerk saying that Mr. Cerny was out of town and that there would possibly be difficulty having it on the agenda, but she would keep me posted. On Friday, I came into City Hall, having not heard anything from the city clerk or the city manager. Neither were in office at the time I was here. I did talk to the assistant city clerk and asked what was the status. She made a phone call, which I believe was to the chief of police, but I could be wrong on that. At the city council, that evening, I subsequently ran into the city clerk at one of the local restaurants and was told that was not going to be on the agenda. However, later that night, I had a phone call from Bob Gargiulo, our operations manager, who said he had talked to the mayor, and the mayor assured him that there was no problem and it would be on the agenda on Saturday. I came in Saturday morning, and I was here with one of our senior staff members. Saw the city clerk walk in, who basically told me that it wasn't on the agenda. There was no resolution. During the discussion, we were sitting here, we were waiting to be asked. We were not asked to come up and speak in front of council. The individual, Maria Handel and I left the meeting. We were approached